I met her about a year ago. At that time, the restaurant that I had inherited from my father was losing customers and was at risk of closing down. The restaurant was located in a town adjacent to a fairly well-known tourist attraction, akin to something like Napa Valley. Tourists used to flood into our town, making it a bustling place. However, a few years ago, the town's train station became a mere stop for the express train, resulting in fewer tourists stopping by and a drastic decrease in customers at my restaurant. I had confidence in the taste of my food. I didn't want to shut down the restaurant so easily. But I couldn't think of a good solution. In order to clear my head, I decided to refresh myself by spending a night at a hotel with hot springs in the neighboring town of Sonoma, a place that also held connections to my father. "Mr. Jones, my name is Catherine, the young proprietress here. I'll bring your dinner, with drinks and appetizers shortly, but the main dish may take a bit longer. I hope you understand." "Is there a problem?" "Actually, one of our kitchen staff fell ill unexpectedly, and so, well, if it's an emergency, there's nothing we can do. I apologize for the inconvenience." "Is the staff member okay?" "Yes, our head chef. Well, he is conscious, just due to his age, we had to." "I see. Take care of him." The person who fell ill, as Catherine, the young proprietress, had unintentionally mentioned, was the head chef. The reason I have chosen to stay at this hotel was because I wanted to taste that head chef's dishes. My late father and this head chef were both apprentices at the same fine dining restaurant. I had heard from my father that they often had disagreements about the taste of the dishes. Eventually, the two had a falling out. My father opened his own restaurant, while the other became the head chef at this hotel. I also often argued with my father about the dishes we served in our restaurant. But now, as I approached 40, I understood clearly. Chefs argue and confront each other because they recognize each other's skills. The stubbornness and pride of a chef can lead to such conflicts. I came to this hotel hoping to gain some insights for revitalizing my own restaurant. However, it seems like tasting the dishes of the head chef I was looking forward to was not available. I hope my old man isn't interfering because he doesn't like the idea of me using this place as a reference. Well, even though they had a falling out, my father wouldn't meddle from beyond the grave with the chef. "I apologize for the inconvenience. We will reduce your accommodation fee by 10% as a slight compensation." A 10% discount? You kidding me? The next morning, when I went to the front desk to check out, Catherine was being bombarded by complaints from other guests. It was undoubtedly because of last night's dinner. "Cut it out, will you? What's your problem? You ate all your dinner, right?" "I ate it." "Then, it's all good." I glared at the guest. The guest seemed a bit taken aback and started whining. "I ate it, but it was so late that my entire schedule got messed up." "Were you planning to go somewhere nice?" "It's none of your business. It was an emergency. Understand that. But, get it." Seeing me get stern, the complainer seemed to have given up. Feeling a bit smug, I gave a snort and a smirk at Catherine, who was bowing her head in thanks. In the end, I returned home without finding even a hint to revamp my restaurant. I had no choice but to continue my modest business, catering to a few regular customers. One day, a seemingly 70-year-old man walked into our restaurant. It seems not really much of a drinker, as he slowly savored the warm bourbon while enjoying 2 or 3 dishes. Occasionally, he would nod approvingly and murmur, "That's good." When I served him the grilled chicken and soup he ordered as his last course, he seemed to enjoy the chicken but tilted his head curiously at the soup. "Is it not to your liking?" I couldn't help but ask. He then inquired if the soup was made with the same recipe I'd inherited from my father. "Well, yes, it is," I responded. While I was growing concerned about a potential problem with the flavor, the man introduced himself. "I apologize for the abruptness. I'm Richard Taylor." "Richard Taylor?" I was confused, not recognizing the name or the face in front of me. I used to share meals with your father back in the day. It's me, Richard, he clarified. I finally realized who he was. He was the head chef of the spa resort I stayed at, who had fallen ill abruptly. He was my father's former fellow apprentice, from whom he had parted on bad terms. I am deeply sorry for my sudden illness when you visited us, he apologized. How's your health now? I'm fine now, as you can see. Richard responded, blushing a bit as he ran his hand through his trimmed hair. Did you come by chance? I heard it from the young proprietress, you know. She had told him about the man who had placated a disgruntled customer the morning after the head chef had collapsed. Young proprietress checked the guest book and informed Richard that it was a certain Noah Jones. Ah, so you're the son of that Jones, and so, tonight, he had come all this way to thank me. That reminded me that my father and Richard had parted ways over their differing cooking styles. When I asked Richard about it, he replied, that is true, but we respected each other's skills as chefs. It was just a matter of different directions. My father always aimed to complement alcohol, so he pursued flavors that matched well with drinks. Richard, on the other hand, not being a big drinker himself, sought after flavors that appealed to everyone. That's why we went our separate ways. Though my father and Richard rarely met, they stayed in touch, he said. You know, I briefly met you at your father's funeral, Richard added. Oh, I see. My apologies for not remembering, I replied. It's been 5 years already. Yes, time flies. As I responded, Richard looked off into the distance. I was curious about Richard's reaction when he tasted the soup earlier. About the soup. Oh, it was delicious, but it felt different from your father's flavor. So, I remade the soup and offered it to Richard. After he took a sip, he said, it feels similar, but does it lack something? Well, how should I put it? It's a more refined taste. Richard, weren't you usually serve my father's soup after a heavy night of drinking? Yes, that's right. Back in our apprentice dormitory, your father and I used to drink together a lot. I'm not a heavy drinker, so I would get drunk quite quickly. Then, your father would say, here, have this as the last drink. It was so delicious. Even when I tried to recreate it by brewing the broth in my way, I couldn't. I asked your father if there was a secret ingredient, and he would say, the secret ingredient is love, keeping it a mystery. The secret was quite simple. My father's dishes were generally strong and flavorful to pair well with alcohol. However, he made his final course soup light. The method was straightforward and nothing special. Simply, he added 1 cup of hot water to 3 cups of regular soup stock to dilute it. After heavy drinking, that was just right and healthy, according to my father's philosophy. I see, after you had a fair bit to drink, saying the secret ingredient is love wasn't entirely off, was it? Richard took a sip of the soup I'd made from scratch, thinned with hot water. It seems I haven't had enough to drink tonight. Is it, perhaps, a bit bland for your taste? Yes. Richard and I burst out laughing. Then we spent some time reminiscing about my old man. Towards the end, Richard got serious. Sorry to ask, but did you lose customers after the termination of the express train stops at the station? Well, yeah, I guess so. Has it affected your business? It's been barely making ends meet recently. Why don't you come work with me after I retire? After you, Richard, you mean at your hotel? Richard explained that he's getting old and thinking about retiring soon. The staff he currently has are excellent chefs, but something is missing, it seems. Everyone's too obedient. They lack the spirit. We don't have anyone with the backbone your father had. I wonder if you'd be a good fit. I wasn't sure if I had as much spirit as my old man did. Plus, it wouldn't be fair to the sheiks who've been there from the start if I just walked in. I'm honored by your offer, but I can't give up on this place. It's my dad's legacy. I'm not ready to let go yet. When I said this, Richard seemed to understand and nodded several times. You're right, I was too hasty. After all, you're the son of that great man. And then, leaving me an invitation to visit his kitchen if I ever change my mind, he left a complimentary voucher for his hotel before departing. About 3 months had passed since Richard started visiting my diner. My business was on the verge of collapse. Maybe I should go and check out Richard's hotel. I wasn't ready to close the doors on my diner just yet, but I knew I needed to do something if I wanted to move forward. Mr. Jones, we've been expecting you. Did I arrive a bit too early? Aiming for a time before the chefs would get busy with dinner preparations, I'd arrived at the hotel a bit early. I'll call the head chef for you. He should be free at this time. That's why you came early, right? She knew my intentions. As I was apologizing to her, she just smiled and said the head chef was also eagerly waiting for me. Hey, everyone, listen up. This is Noah Jones, the man I've been telling you about. As soon as he guided me to the kitchen, Richard introduced me to the other chefs. Everyone bowed their heads and said, "Nice to meet you." Richard, I'm still not. I understand. It just happens that some of our experienced staff decided to go independent recently. Look, they are all young, aren't they? So I told them that a friend of mine might be able to lend a hand. That's you. Richard said that, but I felt a little uncomfortable. After all, I hadn't given up on my dad's diner. That night, after a dip in the hot springs and returning to my room, the hotel's maid had set up my dinner. When asked what I'd like to drink, I ordered a glass of bourbon. Shortly thereafter, the bourbon was brought in. The one who brought it was the young proprietress, named Catherine. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for having me. Please, have a drink. Thank you, I'm honored to have the young proprietress herself serving me. Oh, it's nothing. I've heard about your father from the head chef. Recently, Richard had been talking about my dad to Catherine every chance he got. He told me that the person I am now, it's because of your father. It's odd. My dad used to tell me about Richard, whom he had a falling out with. He referred to him as a fellow apprentice. I continued. You know what they say, the better the friendship, the fiercer the fight. I mused while I poured myself another glass, and then another, from the bottle that Catherine had handed me. Please, feel free to indulge tonight, she suggested. She was quite persuasive. And by the time I was fairly inebriated, Richard arrived. How about this, as a second helping from your dad, a nice bowl of soup to finish off, he offered. I felt the strong urge from Catherine and Richard to become a cook at their hotel. But I couldn't bring myself to close the restaurant my father had left me. That night, I was alone in my bed and I couldn't fall asleep. What part of this dish do you not like? It's old-fashioned. The food Dad cooked. It doesn't matter what you said. We're serving this to customers. I remember arguing with my father about cooking. Those memories faded in and out in my drunken head. My restaurant was quiet for the days that followed. Until one day, an unexpected customer arrived. It was Catherine. Oh, you startled me. I just decided to come. Did Richard suggest you come here? Yes, partly, but I also wanted to come, she replied. Just a moment, please. I said to Catherine and pulled in the shop curtain that was hanging outside. Sorry, but we're closed for today. Because of me? Catherine asked, looking a bit apologetic. Since you're already here, it's not like we're busy. I gestured around the empty restaurant with a resigned laugh. So things are really tough, huh? I'm ashamed to admit it, I confessed. I heard rumors about a major blow to the next town ever since the express train started passing through, she mentioned. Anyway, let's forget about these depressing talks. Let's enjoy ourselves. Catherine was quite a drinker. She was the only daughter in her family that had been running a spa resort in the area for generations. Naturally, she became the young proprietress. She had learned to drink since she took over the role. I start working early in the morning, and I find myself looking forward to a drink after a long day. I'm the same, but in my case, I think I just inherited my father's love for alcohol, I replied. Just a few months earlier, Catherine and I had met only once or twice, but we were now talking like old friends. Come on, let's have another round. Another one? I asked, surprised. Yes, just one more. But my heart is already full. Dad, I'm sorry, I can't keep running this restaurant anymore. 6 months later, I closed the restaurant that my father had left me and took a job as the deputy chef at the spa resort where Catherine and Richard were. Thanks to Richard's efforts, the existing chefs warmly accepted me. When I was appointed as deputy chef, the young proprietress Catherine had proposed a condition. Please live here in this resort and join us for a drink after work. This was exactly what I wished for. I had no reason to refuse. Noah, come on over here, let's have a drink. Again tonight. Why not? Let's do it. When I entered the room where she was waiting, I saw Catherine happily pouring whiskey. Here, have a glass. I responded with a nod and took the shot glass in my hand. And as Catherine poured for me, I thought to myself, I'm about to turn 40. It's not that I haven't had girlfriends in the past, but I've stayed single up to this age. My late parents were late to marry, and when my dad was 40, I was born. Now, as I'm about to turn the same age as my dad was when I was born, I'm here, every night, getting whiskey poured for me by Catherine. Maybe this is what they call fate. What do you mean? In response to Catherine's question, I said this. Will you accompany me for a nightcap for the rest of our lives? For the rest of our lives. After a moment, Catherine smiled broadly and nodded vigorously. Catherine and I gazed at each other. It was a moment when our feelings connected. Thus, Catherine and I got married, with Richard, who retired, serving as a matchmaker. Working together, we strive to manage the hotel. How was it? Subscribing to the channel would be a great motivation for us to continue making content. See you in the next video.